Not too shabby of a night for your St. Louis Cardinals, who shut out the Cleveland Guardians by a final score of 5-0. This is Card Central postgame on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I am Ethan Hannaford. He is Joe Roderick. Sonny Gray. We could have an entire postgame show talking solely about Sonny Gray and the job that he did tonight, posting a Maddux for the first time by a Cardinal since 2021. 9 innings thrown, 1 hit allowed, no runs allowed, 11 strikeouts, and it's done all on 89 pitches, something that you do not see very much in the game today, Joe.
No, it was a fantastic outing, and the more that you watched it, if you watched it, it was on Apple TV, and I went out of my way to get the 7-day trial of Apple TV, seeing that the Cubs game next weekend, next Friday, is also on Apple TV. So trying to get 2 for the price of 1.
There you go.
With that. But watching all the little analytics, all the graphics that they were showing on that. And going back to what Stefan and I were talking about earlier today on Card Central 365, just going over the average, the batting average, and how well guys have been hitting Sonny Gray's fastball. That sweeper tonight was unhittable, undetectable, I think is a better word for it. They could not differentiate between that sweeper and that fastball, and Sonny Gray took advantage of maybe a little bit of a wider zone, a bigger zone that we saw tonight from the umpire. But just outside of that, I mean, it was such good baseball, such good coaching too. You got to give credit to the coaching when you look at a few of the line drives that were hit right at Nolan Arenado and where he was playing at third base too. A perfect placement for them, a fantastic game. And I'll say this too. If you watched the game tonight, you stuck around and you watched any of the post-game stuff, we waited a few minutes to go live here. We waited until I was listening in the other room to the post-game that they were doing. Sonny Gray, they obviously were going to talk to Sonny Gray, but Sonny Gray brings Pedro Pages over to him and he said, "Hey, Pedro's doing this with me." And when they said, "Why is that?" He said, "The one hit I gave up tonight is the only pitch I shook off all night." So we could have been that close to perfection tonight.
Unbelievable. I mean, and it says something about Pedro Pages too, and how good he has been behind the plate. You can't have one really without the other consistently. You really can't. There's a reason they call it a battery. And Sonny Gray most definitely feeding tonight well, but Pedro Pages on the receiving end of that clearly was excellent all night long. Bernie Miklasz just put it out not that long ago, comparing the catcher ERA between the 3 catchers in Pages, Pozo, and Herrera, and it's not even close. I think it's like a full run difference between Pages and whoever is next. So just it goes to show the effect that Pedro Pages has had. But Sonny Gray, I mean, first off, not only his best start of 2025, you could make an argument that this was the best start of his career. We've seen the strikeouts number be this high before, but if I'm correct, I don't think he had ever thrown a Maddux in his career, and it was the first time throwing a complete game shutout since 2015. So you throw.
And I think they were talking about too throughout the broadcast on Apple TV who the catcher was for a majority of those great outings that he had in his career. Did you catch any of that?
I did not know.
The guy that has caught Sonny Gray more than any other catcher in his career, Stephen Vogt, the manager now of the Cleveland Guardians.
How about that? What a worlds colliding. I bet that I bet that Stephen did not enjoy this one as much as he probably had enjoyed some prior ones during their days in Oakland.
You got to think that's one where you just tip your cap, right? That's one where you go,
what are you supposed to do?
You go into the locker room and you go, that's the guy I remember.
This Cleveland offense has been one of the worst in baseball all season long. You tack on that Jose Ramirez was not there tonight due to being hit by a pitch. Had the night off. We'll see what the status is for him tomorrow. But that definitely helps. But that doesn't change that Sonny Gray was absolutely phenomenal tonight. I do think that changed the way that Sonny Gray approached it. Sonny Gray only had one full count tonight, and that was the final batter of the game. You watch the way that he pitched tonight, he was so aggressive. It felt like almost every at-bat was 0-1, 0-2 to start, and just like that, everyone is in a hole. And it really felt like throughout the entirety of the night, there was not a point where Sonny Gray was not in the driver's seat, was not in control. And I think that when you look at the opponent, you look at who you're facing, some of the struggles, I think that is taken into consideration how you approach them. And clearly the message tonight from Sonny Gray and the coaching staff, Pedro Pajes, was let's be aggressive, let's get out in front, and let's take advantage of it.
Oh, 100%. I've seen people in the comments saying, "Oh, not impressive. It was, no Jose Ramirez." That's one guy. That's one guy who, again, you look at how he won through. I mean, everybody except Stephen Kwan struck out tonight for the Guardians. So 8 of those guys, 8 of the 9 starters struck out tonight against the Guardians. Stephen Kwan doesn't strike out much. So if you would have gotten him, it would have been a huge accomplishment at any point in the game tonight. So they went out there with a game plan. We've talked about it from the offensive side many times this year, how good Brant Brown's offensive game plan has been this season. I think tonight's the night you give Dusty Blake credit for going out there and putting together a pitching plan, because I wonder too when they knew Jose Ramirez wasn't going to be in the lineup, because I remember looking earlier today to see what the assessment was going to be of his injury of that yesterday, because he was hit by a pitch yesterday, left the game early, and I assume that's why he wasn't in the game tonight. So I wonder at what point they knew that they were able to put together the game plan and put together the approach they went with tonight.
It's a good question. Regardless, he wasn't in there tonight. The Cardinals take advantage of it. The pitching wasn't the only thing that worked tonight. We'll get to the offense in just a moment. I think something else that I want to mention is only 2 hard-hit balls in general given up by Gray tonight, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. So it's not like there was luck that was in the mix as well tonight. This was pure dominance. This comment here from Labyrinth, if this is true, I haven't confirmed this, but if it is, then it just goes to show how impressive Sonny Gray was tonight. Only one Cleveland batter saw more than 5 pitches in an AB. They had mentioned absolutely insane.
They mentioned that going into the 9th inning, so Stephen Kwan would have been that one batter if that's what he's talking about there, because they went full count with him.
He saw 6. He saw 6. You're right. He saw 6. Yeah. So unbelievable stuff from Sonny Gray tonight. Like I said, without doing a deep dive into the game logs throughout his long tenured career, this has to be, at least box score wise, the best start of his career, which is pretty impressive for him to be doing that. He's been around so long, clearly still in what I would argue is the prime of his career. You could argue these last 3 years of Sonny Gray has been the best Sonny Gray has been throughout his entire career. So clearly Mother Nature isn't catching up to him. Even though there were
not Mother Nature, Father Time, Ethan.
What did I say?
Mother Nature.
It's been a full week. It's been a full week. It's been a long one. You have to forgive me, people. Father Time, Mother Nature, dear God. Mother Nature did its thing here in St. Louis today. Thankfully, this one was in Cleveland. Father Time, definitely not catching up to Sonny Gray up this point, and it's encouraging, right? Because you look at this, and you were halfway through this 3-year deal with Sonny Gray.
Yeah,
you just hit the halfway stretch, and I think that there were some concerns, right, that you were maybe going to have to kind of bite the bullet a little bit in the latter part, and we haven't hit that yet. Maybe we end up having to do that. Maybe next year isn't good. But what we have seen, based off what we have seen in 2024 and through the first half of 2025, boy, you have to be really optimistic about the value of the deal that the Cardinals, that John Mozeliak has gotten from Sonny Gray so far. was by far the number one last year and has been again this year. It's been fun watching him play, and I'm excited hopefully to see this continue. And who knows what the rest of 2025 looks like? Who knows how they approach the trade deadline? I think we can all agree that regardless of how this year goes, the expectations are going to be higher in 2026. And if you can have Sonny Gray still being an impactful top end piece of the rotation, that's going to go a long way for you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But tonight, excellent stuff from him. The last thing I'll say about that, Wayne commenting, Mother Nature, well, his name is Sonny. So thank you for the wise comment. I appreciate that. That is well appreciated. Good one there, Wayne. Joe, any final comments here on Sonny Gray before we continue moving on?
So earlier today, when Stefan and I were talking, I kind of brought up the idea when you look at Sonny Gray's numbers, asking, is he an all-star? Like right now, would you consider him to be an all-star pitcher in the National League? And that I said that before actually looking at who is out there in the National League, like who is deserving of it in the National League. And so I did absolutely zero research before I just kind of threw that thought out there. But when you look at a guy that's, what is he now, 8-2 on the season?
8-2 with a 3.36 ERA.
In today's game, that's impressive.
That ERA, 3. Let's see where that ranks in Major League Baseball. This is among starters. That is 15th and tied for 14th in baseball. The strikeout numbers are near the tops in the league. Let's see here. Where's it's a little bit farther down than I thought it was. 11th. He's 11th in baseball after the 12 Ks tonight. So this is a guy that is flirting around between top 10 and top 15 pitchers in baseball based off of some of the general stats. So
if you
make an argument for it.
If you just look at National League, he leads all the National League in wins right now. Sonny Gray, Clay Holmes, Freddie Peralta, Brandon Pfaadt, Nick Pivetta, Robbie Ray all have 8 wins. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, he leads the National League in wins right now. So I throw his name out there. 2 guys that we've seen this week, Andrew Abbott, Matthew Boyd, that we've seen. I mean, Paul Skeens is out there as one of the top starters in baseball right now. Sonny Gray's name is in that top 10 of starting pitchers in the National League when you're looking at a possible all-star right now.
Yeah, the closer you get, the more of an argument he is making for it. Now, I'm not sure how many starting pitchers get that make each team because I know there is a split between some relievers, some starters, but obviously a lot more starters.
Yeah. And then when you add in also, I mean, there's so many that get bumped because they started on Saturday or Sunday before the break, and I mean, by the time it's all said and done, you get about 25 pitchers that are named all-stars for each league. So I want to know if he's in that first wave.
Definitely.
Is he one of those guys? Is he not just the guy they're going to call up on Monday and say, hey, we need you out here. This guy can't throw anymore.
He is Joe Roderick. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This is Card Central post game, and this is the comment right here. Right, we hope to see him start Game 1 in October. That's the comment right there. We would love to get back to the postseason here in St. Louis. Jay Call commenting here saying, great game for Sonny, so close to a perfect game. Had some timely hitting. Burley's power is here. The strikeouts were were a little frustrating though. I want to focus on. I'm willing to.
Just quickly, breaking news right now. As we're sitting here talking about Sonny Gray being 1 pitch away from a perfect game. Nick Martinez right now for the Reds has just completed 8 innings. They are in the top of the 9th inning, and Nick Martinez has a no-hitter going against the Padres too. So not only is that impressive to do it against Padres offense, also something to look at with the wild card standings as well, with the Padres in there. So another thing to keep an eye on, and we'll keep you up to date on that as they are in the top of the 9th inning. as Nick Martinez takes the mound in that one. He has thrown 108 pitches.
I don't know if we've seen a no-hitter in 2025 yet either.
I want to say there's been one.
Okay, I trust you.
I'm looking it up right now as you talk.
As I talk about J. Cole's comment here, and we're going to talk about Alec Burleson.
No hitter. There have been zero no hitters.
All right. Well, that's what I get for trusting you, Joe.
I thought there was. I really thought that we had seen one. I really thought we had.
Alec Burleson, another solid night at the plate, highlighted by the 2-run home run early in the ball game. Overall, 2 for 4, 2 runs scored, 2 runs driven in, 2 extra base hits. 1 strikeout tallied. His batting average is up to 300 on the year now. There's only so many things that you can say about what Alec Burleson has done. And to be quite frank, Joe, the godsend that he has been in figuring it out, the timing of figuring it out and being able to contribute at a time when you think about when he really started to pick things up, it was when the offense was starting to collectively cool down and there were a few holes in there. He kind of plugged up one of those spots as far as holes in the lineup goes. But also now in a time when you're without Ivan Herrera, for him to be able to continue to perform at the heart of the lineup like he has been, in large part here in the past 7-8 games, it doesn't feel like you've really missed the presence of Herrera because a guy like Alec Burleson has been hitting to the level that he has. That isn't to say that they aren't missing Ivan Herrera, right? I mean, imagine if he wasn't there. It would only lead to more success for this offense. But for him to be doing what he is doing in a time when you could argue it's more needed than at any other point in the year is extremely important. Alec Burleson has been absolutely phenomenal here for at least 6 weeks now.
He did it last year, though. I'm not surprised by it, and it's almost frustrating that it took this long for him to become that everyday player, because last year, when it was so frustrating for so long during this, just the entire season last year was frustrating. The year before that was frustrating to sit and watch every game. But Alec Burleson was there every game. Alec Burleson was that consistent piece that you had up there in the top of the lineup, hitting second for you. And that's what made it so frustrating with him not being, again, I mean, guaranteed, I guess, a spot out of spring training or even going into spring training. They kind of looked at that and said, all right, he'll be battling or he'll be coming off the bench. We're giving that runway to Walker and to Gorman and to Newpar. But Burleson, he'll get his at-bats when we give it to him. It was so frustrating to kind of feel like that was the mindset going into it, because everything Alec Burleson did last year, he earned the opportunity to be put in this spot this season, and he had to go out there and re-earn it again. And that's what he's done. And at this point, you're not benching him. This lineup will only get deeper and longer when Ivan Herrera comes back, when Jordan Walker comes back. And I saw somebody in the chat say that Walker apparently is making a rehab assignment in Memphis tomorrow, that Ali mentioned that in the postgame maybe. So, or at some point today. But it's frustrating that it took that long, but I'm happy they're in it where they are. It's 7 games over 500. And now you get that Alec Burleson in there to hit the way he hits. It's just a matter of finding places for him to play or just sucking it up and dealing with potentially a tiny drop in defense somewhere on the field.
So the Alec Burleson conversation is interesting because last year, I believe what we saw from him in large part was we began to see the potential of what he could be at times, right? But there were clearly still several holes in his game. He has improved drastically defensively. He was a big defensive liability last year. Liability for 2025 is a little bit strong of a word. Watching him play, he looks much more polished out there. I wouldn't say he's as good as Jordan Walker defensively in right field, but he's gotten much better. He holds his own at first base. Not the case last year. So defensively, he's been much better. Last year, his swing percentage was way higher. I don't have it in front of me, but he made way more contact last year at pitches that were outside of the zone, which speaks to how good his ability to put the ball in play is. But with a guy that is as good of a raw hitter as he is, what coaching basically brought to him was they said, hey, if you are a little more disciplined at the plate and you wait for the pitches that are in your sweet spot, which are here, here, or here, like rather than being disciplined and chasing early in the count outside of the zone, then you're going to have way more results even than you did last year. It was a little bit of a two-tailed story in 2024 for Alec Burleson when you look at the numbers. The first half was excellent. The final couple months of the season, he trailed off. The power disappeared. This year has been a different story. He's much more disciplined at the plate. He is making harder contact. He's hitting for more power than he did in 2025. And as you said, he has solidified himself. So I still think that there were some question marks going into 2025, especially when you consider, right, the restriction that he was going in defensively. He plays right field, first base, and DH, and the amount of guys that you had that could play those positions. So I understand going into the year why he was in the mix for those, but more than anyone else, he has proven himself that he deserves to be in every day. More than Nolan Gorman, more than Jordan Walker. I guess I don't know if I'd say more than Ivan Herrera. They're probably 1A, 1B right now because of both. They've both produced so well, right? But he has completely earned the opportunity, and I think during this 6-week stretch, he has gone from a guy that was in the midst of. He was one of the runway guys. He didn't necessarily have the attention that Gorman and Walker did for their runway, but he was still a runway guy. If he wasn't hitting this year, he wouldn't be playing like he is. But because he is, he has concreted himself. He has cemented himself as a guy that should be in there just about every single day.
But let me throw this out there at you, because you mentioned that he should get those starts over Gorman, over Walker. Okay, throw Lars Nootbaar's name into that conversation too. That's the one that I think you kind of look at, and that's where I would throw his name into that, to Lars Nootbaar, because Lars Nootbaar again has struggled to the point 0 for 3 tonight. By the way, but has struggled to the point where they drop him out of that leadoff spot. They drop him down in the order. Yeah, he's hitting for power. He can swing more freely now that he's down that 5-6 spot in the order. But if Lars Nootbaar is no longer your leadoff hitter, then he's no longer an everyday guy. He's no longer. You can put him in there as a defensive replacement. I talked a lot about this before the latest Ivan Herrera injury, that I wanted to see Ivan Herrera catch more to allow things to open up a lot more with the lineup. I'm kind of off that now, especially with the hamstring injury, a 5-week hamstring injury, or however long it's going to take him to get back. But that's kind of where I look with that. Tell me what the value of Lars Nootbaar is over those other guys that you mentioned.
This is a tough conversation, right? Lars Nootbaar, the biggest issue prior to 2025 for him had been the ability to stay healthy, but everything that we had seen from him outside of that, when he had been able to be healthy, in large part was really good. The thing with Lars Nootbaar is, in large part, still the underlying stats look good. I know you can only rely on those. You can only look at those so long before you do need to start seeing production. But if your argument is because he's not in a leadoff spot, his ability and his on-base discipline, or what his on-base discipline has been for the large majority of his career, just doesn't matter, I disagree with that. I think that the argument right now that you could make is because you are so light on right-handed bats that if there was a time to sacrifice the plate appearances for a lefty, if Lars Nootbaar ends up being the odd man out because he's not hitting right now, maybe I could justify it because you are without Jordan Walker and Ivan Herrera. But right now, I don't know who you're replacing him with if it is a righty. So I don't even know if that's a conversation right now. Lars Nootbaar still leads this team in home runs. Right. Just to go to show that, like, his game can play in different ways. I don't know if I necessarily agree that he's as best as a defensive substitution. I think that I'm not very solidified in where I'm at on this conversation. I would still put him a slight level above the runway where we're looking with Nolan Gorman, where we're looking with Jordan Walker, because I think he has been able to prove it a little bit more over his career. But I get the conversation. If the struggles do continue, then maybe we're having a different conversation. But ever since that over 27 stretch, he's really responded to that pretty well coming out of that. I mean,
he has.
batting right around 300. The power's been there. The plate discipline looks to be returning to form, getting back to that point. So I don't know if I'm fully on that with you, but I do agree that like you at some point, right, the conversation's going to have to go from runway to production. And it's going to have and people have kind of been, back and forth on where they're at on that, but that's coming from Ollie. I mean, Ollie just said that recently. And if Lars Nootbaar is going to perform, then he should be in the lineup. If Jordan Walker is going to perform, he should be in the lineup, but he hasn't been performing as of late. One last thing I'll say real quick, and I do agree with this. Ollie said this a couple of days ago too. If this team is going to be their best in 2025, then Lars Nootbaar has to be Lars Nootbaar. He's a guy that you have to get right. So I do agree with that. Whether it be in the 1 spot or it be in the 5 spot, the style of player that Lars Nootbaar is important because he has shown that he can also swing for power. We know what he can be when he's at his best regarding plate discipline. So I don't know if I would put him in the sacrificing at bats to the extent that maybe you are with a Jordan Walker right now. But, is he a guy that maybe you could make an argument right now, at least doesn't need to be playing 6 games a week? Yeah, maybe I'm willing to have that conversation.
I look at it overall from if you're facing a lefty, if you have a lefty on the mound,
sure,
you're never in. Brendan Donovan's an everyday guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Alec Burleson's an everyday guy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are going out there and you're putting your best team out there, Victor Scott's got to be your center fielder. And if that's the case, so
against lefties,
but he's a lefty, so that gives you 3 lefties in the lineup right now. And that's where I say Lars Nootbaar moves into that platoon role of lefty righty in a world where you have Ivan Herrera and you have Jordan Walker, because then you have an outfield of Burleson, Walker, and Victor Scott.
Well, the Cardinals have I thought that this week was pretty telling in that Garrett Hampson got back-to-back starts, and one of them against the lefty was in center field. Maybe it may have been back-to-back days for Victor Scott. I know that you're like you said, it's the runway. You want to give Victor Scott those at-bats against lefties, but if we're talking about who's going to put right now is going to put up better at-bats against left-handed pitching, I'm taking Lars Nootbaar over Victor Scott 7 days out of 7 in the week. That's not to say that Victor Scott can't get to that point, but it doesn't become a defensive concern because Garrett Hampson is a strong option in center field at that point. I don't have
a new guy. Yeah,
I'm playing devil's advocate more so at this point than anything. This isn't hardcore disagreement. I see the point you're making.
Yeah, Garrett Hampson's a guy. I think you wanted to see what you had in him and see how he played out there. I would be shocked if Garrett Hampson is on the Cardinals roster. It's in the Cardinals organization come August 1st.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, it's a move you had to make. You had to bring somebody else up here to kind of see what they were doing, and just let's throw him out there in center field. All right, let's give him short. Let's see what his arm looks like on the mound. Just kind of make him do it all in his first few days here with the Cardinals.
Yeah, sure, totally. Agreed. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. Yeah. So I think we hit that conversation on the head. We're gonna go ahead. Let's go ahead and let's take a pause. Let's tell you a little bit here about DraftKings. As always, Card Central postgame shows are presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Be sure to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play. $5 get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Guys, come on. What a deal, right? I mean, 5 for 50. Come on, it's a steal. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He is Joe Roderick. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This is Card Central Postgame on STL Sports Central following a Cardinals 5-0 win against the Cleveland Guardians in game number 1 of the series. The last thing I want to say about this is an interesting comment here from Taylor. She says that I think we can put Newt back in the leadoff by the Pirates series. Here's my question to you, Joe. It's more so related around if Newt gets to the point, let's say that he continues to swing a red-hot bat, the discipline continues to improve, and we're seeing beginning of the year Lars Nootbaar, right? Where you're like, oh my God, this is a dream for a leadoff spot, right? If we see that guy return, and not even necessarily by the Pittsburgh series, do you like him at his best more than Brendan Donovan in the way that he has been swinging the bat at the top of the lineup more in the leadoff spot? What is your preference at the top of the order?
Brendan Donovan's average has dropped a bit since he's moved to the leadoff spot, but I'll still take him up there. And I will also give Mason Wynn a shot at leadoff before I even toy with the idea of putting Lars Nootbaar.
Why is that?
Because I think Lars Nootbaar proved that he's not a leadoff guy. That you drop in the lineup, let him be free swinging, let him go out there and be that power hitting guy. Go for 20, 25 home runs on the season rather than be that leadoff hitter that wasn't getting the job done. I would much rather have one of the top batting averages in baseball be up there at the top, or a guy who was up there pretty much all last season at the top of the lineup. If you want to go with that, because I think too, again, and everything I'm saying is kind of operating in a world where Ivan Herrera's back, because I think we saw that Ollie really likes having Ivan Herrera up high in that lineup, even toying with him in the number 2 hole as well. So I just think there are other options and this lineup could be a lot better with Lars Nootbaar hitting 5th, 6th, 7th than having him at leadoff. I think there are better options on this roster right now than him batting leadoff.
That's going to be, I know we had a couple of people in here saying that they like Donovan that spot as well. I'd be curious as to what, just in general, the thought would be on that from the fan base, because obviously Brendan Donovan, he profiles as that guy very well. He's a contact hitter, hits for high average. But I think it's also easy to go with recency bias and to go with him because you're remembering the recent Lars Nootbaar. Here's the biggest difference, right? Is I think you're probably more likely to get a consistent Donovan that's going to hit 270 in that spot than you are maybe to see a consistent Lars Nootbaar. I mean, at least this year we've seen a very good Lars Nootbaar in the leadoff spot, and we've seen a very bad Lars Nootbaar in the leadoff spot. And we've seen how that affects them, right? Like when Lars Nootbaar was at the top, this was the offense was ringing. I mean, and not that they haven't been outside of that, but when he began struggling, then a lot of the issues followed, right? Because you weren't setting the tone at the top. So that is going to be an interesting conversation had, because I would be really surprised if Lars Nootbaar does not end up in the leadoff spot at some point again this season. I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, appreciate Walt pointing out and reminding me too. The toe injury kind of coincided with the drop in the batting average. So, and with 2 guys on the injured list, you might need Donovan to push through.
It's also, to be fair, it's probably also not realistic to expect Brendan Donovan to bat 330 all year long. Like, guys in baseball just don't bat that high anymore. So naturally, there was going to be some cool off at some point. I'm not saying he can't be a 300 hitter this year. I think he very well could be, but that was going to happen at some point. So maybe toe related, but I think that toe thing had been going on, lingering for a while prior to.
Nick points out in the chat about Victor Scott. Victor Scott, everybody wants to dog on him for his season that he's having. Victor Scott's hitting 235 on the season. Lars Nootbaar is hitting 228 on the season. So Victor Scott has a higher batting average. And when he gets on base, I mean, it's instant, he's instantly at second too. So he is having, I think, a better season than what we are maybe looking at. And maybe the expectations are a little higher with that. And Victor Scott tonight, by the way, got screwed twice. 2 of those he struck out looking 3 times tonight. At least 2 of them, strike 3 was not a strike. One was up high at the letters, and the other one was outside, far outside corner. Neither one was in the box. And it's one thing if one of those is called strike 3, but you can't give them both. And that's what I mentioned very, very long ago in the show, that Sonny Gray, he benefited, I think, from a bigger zone tonight. And when you look tomorrow and you see that scorecard tweeted out tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if both Victor Scott's strikeouts are on there as some of the key moments in the game.
And just to clarify, when I was discussing the Nootbaar versus Scott conversation, that was specifically right now against left-handed pitching. Mm-hmm. And Lars Nootbaar, I do trust much more right now against left-handed pitching than I do Victor Scott. That is flat out. I'm not hesitant to say that. Now, that isn't to say that you have to give them opportunities in order for them to work through those things. But Victor Scott has also cooled off significantly in the past probably month. Like he's cooled off a lot. And I know you could say the same thing about Lars Nootbaar. But Lars Nootbaar has responded and made some adjustments. Victor Scott still looks pretty uncomfortable at the plate right now. That's part of baseball. That's part of being a young player. You're going to have to go through and make those adjustments. I'm not saying take away his playing time. I'm just saying when in the comparison of right now, when you're starting to get into the heat of a division race, you're nearing the trade deadline. It's not far away. Decisions are being made about whether or not you are going to be buying or selling or doing anything at the deadline. Well, wins are important right now, and against left-handed pitching, I understand why you would use Nootbaar against Victor Scott. That's all that I was saying in that case specifically.
And my wish list doesn't really change that much when it comes to the trade deadline as far as what I want the team to do. I want them to figure out a way to open a spot for Michael McGreevy. I've been saying that, I think, for 3 months now. At the trade deadline, I think adding another bullpen arm is a must, and it's going to happen. I think it happens every trade deadline, whether they're in it or not. You always need those extra bullpen arms. It's just what kind of level of arm you're getting. I keep going back and forth though on whether or not you look at the catcher position. Is there a catcher out there, an offensive catcher out there that you would toy with bringing in to this team right now?
I am a hardcore no on this, but go ahead, finish.
I'm just saying because right now, Pedro Paez, again, called an amazing game today. I did find the catcher ERA stat, by the way. I found that he has an ERA of 3.63 on the season. I'd have to sort it out among qualified guys, but right now that it says ranked 32, but there's guys in there that have caught for like an inning.
Right.
So again, it doesn't matter, It doesn't count for that. So, but I will say that Yoel Pozo's is 4.25. His catcher ERA is 4.25. So more than half a run higher than what Pedro Paez has. But I just look at, okay, is Pozo going to be the answer as your backup catcher for the rest of the season? Is Ivan Herrera going to catch any more this season, or is he just truly a DH the rest of the year? And if he is, do you go and do you look for that catcher that can come in and be a bat in the lineup and catch 2 days a week and provide a little pop?
So you're looking for a replacement for Joel Pozo as well.
Yes.
Okay.
And that could also give you, again, catch a few days a week, and that when you have him in there is a better bat than what Pedro Paez is.
Man, I mean, they have so many options right now at catcher. 2 of their top 6 prospects are catcher. I know anything you add, if it were to be a catcher, would be a rental. So I would assume is your mindset here. So what kind of options are there that you'd be willing to give up? I think that they are satisfied with what Joel Pozo has provided as the 2B or whatever you want to call him catcher. Offensively, he's been solid off the bench as a right-handed bat, and he's been serviceable defensively. Herrera, it's hard to know. I don't even know have they been able to pinpoint the play that in which he strained the hamstring? What did it happen?
Yet, no.
Did it happen while he was catching? I didn't see anything. So, maybe, but they're going to make sure that Herrera's not back until he's 100%. They're not going to risk it. His bat's too important. I don't know if that means that you're not going to catch him now. I mean, this is a guy that was catching once a week, maybe once every 6 games, 2 every 7. So it's not like he was catching a lot in the first place. So I don't know necessarily if you go for if all of a sudden like having him be as limited as he was already catching. I don't know if that hurts you, if that's a huge risk to have him catch once a week. Personally, I don't think that's what's going to get him. So it just feels like it would be a waste to add in that spot when personally, I just there are spots that I think that there are more of a need than that spot right now. I want to find a way to get Michael McGreevy into the rotation as well. I agree with you there. Nothing. You're not gonna give me anything on that one.
That was I tried real hard on that.
I'm sorry. We'll just ignore
the best 36. The best 36 in St. Louis sports history.
That made me sick. You are a sick and twisted man. Go out and go and check on STL Sports Central on the socials. Going through currently and 1 through 99, the best athletes to play for a St. Louis team. So go out and check that out. And may or may not have seen Joe Roderick trying to make an argument for Michael McGreevy for number 36. Unbelievable.
I have a graphics department. I'm going to use the graphics department. And as long as they go along with me, we're going to have a good time.
As we take a look here, there's a one final thing that I want to discuss here before we wrap, and there's still we still have time before the All-Star break, but I thought this was a good question I saw from Lauren earlier saying, do you think that the Cardinals are going to change the pitching staff order after the All-Star break and have Sonny Gray and Libby as your 1 and 2? This tends to be the time, right, Joe, where we do see some tweaks to the rotation, and there is enough time usually for everyone to have a full week off to where that's not affected. You don't want to necessarily give guys 12 days off. That doesn't end up always being beneficial, especially if it were to be for a guy like Sonny Gray or someone. Mm-hmm. In your eyes, just paint the picture 1 through 5. I know that there's a couple of weeks from deadline to from All-Star break to deadline, so it could potentially change sometime in there. But from what the roster is now, what would be your 1 through 5 coming out of the All-Star break?
So I'm going to have a little long answer for this. Sure. Matthew Liberatore should not be moved up to the number 2 spot. He is your number 2 starter. If you are going into that wild card series, Matthew Liberatore is starting game 2 for me. The rotation moving forward, though, I am not putting him at number 2 because Matthew Liberatore is already throwing more innings this year than he ever has in his professional career. Why move him up? If anything, you want to kind of space it out and you want to utilize that 6-man rotation as much as you can in the second half of the season to not put a lot of innings on McGreevy, to not put a lot of innings on Matthew Liberatore, and use the arms that you have. I mean, you're getting right now, Miles Michaelis probably doesn't have a whole lot of innings left in his arm in his career, especially his Cardinal career. He's pitching well this year. Utilize that to the best of your ability. Don't overdo it. So I think you do keep the rotation as is. Unless if Fedde goes out there again and has another dud his next time out, then maybe we kind of revisit that. But right now, I say you keep Liberatore at the back end, keep McGreevy at the back end, just to limit the innings that they are throwing overall.
There you go. You heard it right there from Joe Roderick. Keep Libby at the back end right now. Make sure you're taking care of the arm. We know we've seen the velocity dip here a little bit in the last, probably 4 to 5 starts. Now, what we have seen, though, Joe, and what I've been encouraged by with Matthew Liberatore, not to go off on a random tangent here, but the velocity has still continued to dip more than it was earlier in the year in the later innings that he throws in a start. But we aren't seeing them that bite him nearly as much, right? He is adjusting and he's finding ways to get guys out later in outings. And sometimes that's part of the game, right? Like you gas out, like the velo is going to decrease a little bit. Not everyone's going to be Justin Verlander or Paul Skeens up there throwing 100 in the 8th, 9th inning. So how do you find ways to adjust when the velo wasn't always there? And that's going to be something that is to see that's going to be something that'll be interesting to watch if he can adjust and find ways to get guys out in other ways. Yeah. You mentioned Miles Michaelis just a moment ago. He gets the start tomorrow. He will be facing off against Slade. Is that Sassoni? Is that how you say that? Cecconi.
I have to bring it. I don't have the lineup up for tomorrow yet. So,
for the love of God, someone help me out here. Either way, that's a baseball name. Slade. Look at that. Slade Sassoni. That is absolutely sick. So we'll make sure that
Slade's a name. Yeah, Slade's a name that you I mean, I'm surprised you just don't have a whole roster of Slade somewhere in a 12U team.
Sassoni? I don't know. Either way, we'll make sure that for Card Central 365 in the morning that we have the pronunciation for you, so we're not just throwing out random.
Schaefer will be all over that.
We'll be on top of it. But Miles Michaelis tomorrow. The Cardinals set up well to try and get a series win here, get right back on the right track after dropping back-to-back games against the Cubbies. Any final thoughts here, Joe, before we wrap?
No, look forward to seeing them come out again and attack tomorrow, facing another righty before the lefty on Sunday. So I'll mark tomorrow's down as a must-win.
Okay, you heard it right there. Joe Roderick, I'm Ethan Hannaford. We say so long. Card Central postgame on STL Sports Central. The Cardinals 5-0 winners against the Cleveland Guardians. And one final shout out to Sonny Gray, a Maddux, the first one since 2021. Prior to that, 2011, Chris Carpenter. So the last three Cardinals to throw Madduxes: Chris Carpenter, Adam Wainwright, and Sonny Gray. Pretty good company, I'd say so, for Sonny Gray. Not too shabby, but most definitely fun to watch him tonight. 89 pitches, 11 strikeouts, 1 hit in the complete game.
Fun to watch. They're fun to watch on TV. They are not fun to be in attendance for when you have all-inclusive seats. I was at the one at Wrigley that Kyle Hendricks threw back in 2019. When you pay for rooftop tickets and it's all inclusive,
nice.
Yeah. When you get to the 5th inning and you realize that the beer's going to be cut off soon, you start loading up an entire table full of drafts to make sure you get your money's worth, because a Friday afternoon Cubs Cardinal game on the rooftop is not a cheap ticket.
You know, I would imagine that there are some people in Cleveland right now that are relating pretty hardcore with you, because tonight was 2 hours and 11 minutes. So, you know what? I don't think you're alone tonight, Joe.
I would think so, yeah.
He is Joe Roderick. I'm Ethan Hannaford. We say so long, and we will be back in the morning for Card Central 365. Thank you so much for joining us right here, as always, on STL Sports Central.